Hello, I'm Dr. Sam Hancock of the Emerald Planet and Emerald Planet TV. We come to you on a week-to-week basis from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we look around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technology, services, and products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And as we have a planet of 9 billion people by 2038 and possibly 12 to 13 billion by the end of this century, how are we going to be able to take care of all these people on planet Earth? And that's what Emerald Planet's all about. We come to you looking at the solutions, the best practices from around the globe as we create the Emerald Planet. Hello, welcome to the Emerald Planet. We're making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And seeing the long-term impacts of climate change. We're glad to have you. Thank you for being with us.
We're sharing with you about the rain gardens, basecaping, and the urban forest being put in the built environment. So many urban areas across the United States and literally around the globe, tens of thousands of cities, villages, towns, and small communities actually can benefit from removing invasive species from their localities and putting in and allow to thrive the native species. So the whole thing is about native species and creating the natural space in a built environment is very important as climate change is alive and well and expanding across planet Earth. Many of the western areas of the United States, but also in many countries around the globe, are drying out, where the East Coast are actually having increased amount of rainfall to where it's almost destructive. And so what we're doing is we're looking at native species and using these species to ameliorate the negative impact of climate change. I'm not going into all the variety names. I'm just going to share with you that in your local communities, you want to get involved with your cooperative extension service of your land-grant university in the United States and many of the agricultural universities around the globe and many other countries. Also, the plant and the tree nurseries that actually have native species from your own local area. And the native species actually thrive and adapt to their local area. And many of these have been there for millennia, thousands of years. And the native, non-native species were brought in the last maybe 100 or 200 years and really have not adapted into the local environment. So even the insects, the butterflies, the pollinators, bees, and others are looking for their own species because they've all evolved together over decades and millennia. And so it's very important that we match the flora and fauna, even in the ground where we have the bioorganisms. Everything needs to be living from deep in the earth up to us human beings. So it's all about bringing balance to nature to capture the amount of rainfall that's coming, if it's increasing, or if it's coming in shorter bursts in the monsoon seasons. How do you capture that excess rainfall at the time to process it, to recharge the aquifers, and at the same time to increase the groundwater that's available for native species plants? And these all adapted well together over the decades, millennia, and so it's very important that we revert back to these native species and to create almost a natural space. And I purposely put this in here. This is an impervious surface. This is a sidewalk, but yet it was actually installed so that the water would run into the rain gardens on each side of this impervious space. Better to put in pavers and or leave space in between the concrete or the slate or the brick to allow the rainwater to be able to flow into the soil, be processed by the earth itself. So there's no mechanical systems involved in any of this area. And at the same time to recharge the aquifers, raise the groundwater levels, and to aid transpiration. Transpiration is the amount of evaporation from the trees, the grasses, and the soil that then goes back into create new clouds. This is also another way in a built environment where actually you can remediate the amount of runoff. You see the downspouts coming in, going over the mechanical systems behind this house. On the immediate left of this photograph, you see a 300-gallon rain barrel. And these are native species here. So that rain barrel actually captures the runoff and then goes into the rain barrel. And then that water is used in this native species area that's beside these pavers. And these pavers, you can see, are gapped so that the rainwater, as it comes in, either down from the sky or off the ground surrounding the streets and the grass and the hard-packed clay, actually can be absorbed. Again, processing, sequester to hold, and then to release that water over a very slow period of time. Now, this is going back to the prototypes that have been installed in my area here in Washington, D.C. And this is after 15 months, just 15 months. We saw the very small plants that were put in the beginning, and they said, leave them alone. They will grow and they'll actually fill their space. And that's what we're seeing here. We're seeing from this rainfall, it's going into this rain garden. And you can see around the edges of this, actually no runoff. The water is hitting on even the slate, and then it's going into the gaps in between the slate. And so just like what is happening here in this rain garden, where it's actually taking the rainfall, capturing it, and storing it in the ground, holding it with the mulch. This swell that you've seen before with the design of this is to actually, it's down 2 feet into the earth. The clay was broken up into very small particles and then mixed with over a ton of this mulch that you have here. And so that allows the water to go in, to be stored, but also very slow release. And they're saying within 8 to 12 hours, that water could be anywhere from about the same amount of 6 to 12 miles from this very site. And so this is a very beautiful, functioning rain garden and native species that are really taking us back to an era before any of the built environment was installed in this area. Now, this is actually about a month after the photo just before this was taken. Give you an idea of how fast the native species are growing. And what you see above ground is about the depth of the root system below ground. And that's, you find, very amazing, because when we started with this soil, it was hard-packed clay. Virtually none of the rainfall, the oxygen was actually going in to the ground itself. And now this is processing over 46 inches of rainfall a year is being processed through this rain garden. You can see this is about roughly an inch of rainfall. You can see the water in the trough that's come off the roof and around the yard, flowing into this rain garden. And this is being captured, and then it's going to be distributed and held in place by the mulch that's been placed here. And so this is the new way of creating what's called new water. New water is taking what before was considered a waste or something that was very hazardous, heavy downpours, and we tried to shed that water off as quickly as possible out into the storm drains, out into the tributaries, creeks, into the ponds, into the rivers, out into the Chesapeake Bay and into the Atlantic Ocean. Now we want to capture and sequester this water as close to us as possible to recharge the aquifers and to raise the groundwater around us. Another scene of this from the other side, but these native species are absolutely amazing how actually tiny these were just 12 to 14 months before this, and how they're now spreading throughout the rain garden. And again, the root systems are about as deep in the ground as these plants are tall. So these are not shallow root systems at all, but these are a huge root ball. Organic root stimulant was placed in the bottom of the hole before these were actually planted. And now, because of the carbon capture of the leaves of these systems, along with the rainfall, the dew, and the mist, the carbon that's being captured out of the air is going into the roots, and these are growing at a very rapid rate. So what you're seeing here in front of you is an entire microsystem because in the hot days of the summer, these will transpire the water from the ground and also what's stored in the leaves and the trunks of these different plants. And that will go to create new rainfall, new clouds. And so this is really an entire system. This will give you an idea of looking at the back of the property and how lush green this is from what it was before. Actually, we planted clover in this area. Clover is a nitrogen fixing plant. Also, it's part of being a carbon sump. So that goes to capture the water, goes to capture the carbon, and it fixes nitrogen in the soil. And then on the immediate left side, this is a native species. This is a bald cypress. This tree actually has grown 4 feet in less than 15 months. Just absolutely amazing. You see the base capers both on the left and the right side, and how vigorous these plants are. And again, these were created as rain gardens to capture as much of the moisture as possible. This is an overview shot of the rain garden and this entire system of how the clover, which is part of the lower level of the urban forest, which will have 5 different levels of canopy. The clover is working very well to rid of the non-native species grass that have been planted decades ago. And the clover is gradually choking that out, making it almost as a carbon sump carpet. For this, you can see the pavers themselves, because the spacing in between the slate are absorbing the water very well. And then the native species plants are working extremely well to capture. So thank you for being with us on the Emerald Planet TV as we talk about the rain gardens, basecaping, and the urban forest, a prototype that can be used across the African continent, the South Pacific, Latin America, Europe, Asia, and all the other areas around as we create the Emerald Planet.